each service, and we brief that along with the Navy League background, other interesting information, just before we get to the bottom line of here's what we're asking for, and that's what they're expecting. So what we're going to be doing today and the next couple of months before this May event, and it's scheduled for May 15th, is go through the training about all the information that's available on the Navy League website. The most important information really is contact information for the members of Congress, because it's up to the essentially the region presidents and their teams, as they designate them, to go ahead and try to schedule these meetings with them on the 15th. And what we're saying is, if you can get it, fine, do your best effort. But otherwise, for those who we deem it important enough, or if you want to keep talking to your member of Congress, then we'll revert to virtual meetings following the Hill meetings. So that's about it. So what we're going to go through here with Luke is basically, Hill surge / anchors away fly in 101, and how you do it. So Luke, back over to you, unless there's some questions.
Thanks, Jim. Well, I see Jim Semrad has a question, but let me see if I can answer it before you ask it, Jim, because I'm sure there's a few folks that heard about the fly-in just now from Jim Offutt, and they're saying, when are we getting more information about that? We hope to be sending out an email this week from National President Chris Townsend to folks with the information for the registration page, the hotel where most of our folks are going to be staying, the date, the times, and all the other information that you need. I do apologize that we haven't gotten it out sooner, but hopefully this week that email will go out, and then folks will know everything they need to know. Again, it's not a tremendous amount of information. It's the date, the hotel, the basic plan, kind of the logistics of it and things like that. Jim Semrad, does that answer your question?
Not really.
Okay.
Well,
really
Jim Semrad, hold your question until later. That if it doesn't involve the flying and the logistics, let's not talk about it right now. Let's wait till the end.
Okay. Well, my mistake. Yeah, my mistake, Jim Semrad, for calling on you. If you don't mind, you just hold your questions till the end, and we'll just go ahead and jump into this. And hopefully somewhere along the lines, maybe I can answer your question. But if not, we will certainly take questions at the end. Jim Offutt, let me just ask, can you see the navyleague.quorum.us webpage on your screen? Just want to make sure I'm sharing my screen.
You've got everybody's pictures up there, and
I
not
see.
the screen. It was there for a while, but now there you go. Now we can see your basic screen.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, let me just do this. I think this will work. Did that work?
There you go. There you go.
Okay.
Now you're up.
Okay.
Slides up now.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and get started. So, folks, the most important thing you need to know is that navyleague.quorum.us is the one-stop shopping portal for everything that you need for your meetings with members of Congress. Now, again, whether you're doing those virtually, I know we have a few folks, for example, I think Don Giles is on the call with us. Don does a wonderful job of meeting with his members of Congress every year, but he does that virtually. Even this year, when we're doing the in-person fly-in, I don't think Don will be joining us. So the information he needs is on this page. The information that folks who will be attending the fly-in will need will also be on this page. This is where absolutely everything is. And so with that in mind, let me go ahead and start getting into just a few things that we have here so you at least know where to look. Again, this is navyleague.quorum.us. On this right side, you'll see links to all of the trainings and Legislative Affairs Committee meetings that we've had going back to January 2023. If you want to look into any of these, all you have to do is click on these links. It'll pull up a YouTube video, which is the recording of our meetings and our trainings. In fact, this training is being recorded, and I'll have the link for this training up here within a few days, and so you can click on that anytime you need to. You can share the link with other folks as well so that they can get this training. You'll see, again, going all the way back to January 2023, you might notice here the Maritime Policy Statement launch event video. That's the video from the actual event where we had our authors and also our chairman, Sinclair Harris, briefing an audience on the Maritime Policy Statement. That's a very interesting one. But again, all of those videos are here, and today's training will be here as well. So you can look back over this and see everything that we discussed if you want to review it again in the future. I'll also mention here below Advocacy 101 is a Zoom GoToMeeting and WebEx training that we put together. If you click on that, that will take you to this video, which is only about 11 minutes long, about 11 minutes and 29 seconds. And if you have any questions about how to use, how to schedule, how to coordinate these virtual meetings, how to actually make them happen, this video is where you want to go to review that information so that you can set up your virtual meeting and kind of meet with your member of Congress that way. So if you have any issues with virtual meetings, you can click there. And of course, as always, if you can't find the answer here, please go ahead and just reach out to us and we'd be happy to answer your question. Now, most important is here on the left side of the screen. Again, all of this is just on this homepage, navyleague.quorum.us. On the left side of the page, we have all of the materials, all of the links that you're going to need for your meetings with members of Congress, again, whether that's virtual or during the fly-in. We'll get into that in just a second. At the top here, just want to mention kind of this top left quadrant. This is where we have our campaigns. If you were to click on this one, for example, support pay parity for the Coast Guard, it would open up this email campaign. It will provide everything that you need. It's already written, drafted. It's already set up to go to your members of Congress based on your address. So, for example, here you can see my email will go to Senator Kaine, Senator Warner, and Congressman Connolly with this information about supporting Coast Guard pay parity. Now, the campaigns that we have up on the homepage right now are kind of evergreen. The Pay Parity Act has not passed yet. However, I just spoke with some folks during our event last week up on Capitol Hill. They feel fairly comfortable with where things are right now. So it's not an urgent initiative. Same is true when we talk about Defend Jones Act jobs. We always support them. We always support the Jones Act. There's not really an urgent battle happening on the Hill right now regarding the Jones Act, but we have kind of have this up there all the time, along with making sure we have enough money for Navy and Marine Corps shipbuilding. Now, last thing I'll mention on the campaigns is that we do sometimes get what we call a rapid response campaign. That is when we find out about an amendment that we oppose or a bill that we support or something like that, and we need all hands on deck all at one time, sending emails to their members of Congress in support of something or in opposition to something. When that happens, we create the campaign, we send it out via email to all of our legislative affairs, grassroots advocates, and then they contact their members of Congress. And I have to tell you, it is very, very effective. I get responses from these various offices telling us that they got a bunch of emails from our members, asking us for more information, asking us why we oppose this particular provision or amendment or whatever the case may be. So when we do get those rapid response campaigns, it's very, very effective. And again, it's as easy as this. Your information is already there. All you have to do is click submit down here at the bottom, and it goes right out. Now, again, at this moment, we don't have a rapid response campaign that we're working on. We just kind of have these evergreen campaigns. But as we move forward, I'm sure we will have some rapid response campaigns. And as we start doing our meetings with members of Congress, we might supplement that with some of these campaigns. So we're meeting with them. We're also sending emails, things like that. So keep your eyes open for that. And of course, we'll email you to let you know when those things are happening. Now for the really important stuff when it comes to your meetings with members of Congress. The first thing I want to mention are the items under Sea Services Hill Surge Toolkit. It's a little bit of a mouthful. We will be updating these with all the relevant materials, but what you have right here at the moment are some of the most important things. For example, this first link, if you were to click on it, it would pull up this presentation from 2023. We will create a new presentation for 2024, but this is the presentation that every single one of our advocates used throughout 2023. We were doing virtual meetings then. We had over 200 of them, and every single time it was this same presentation. This gives us uniformity, clarity, and obviously keeps us all on the same page. So that's the first link. The second link here, I'm trying to upload this document kind of as we speak, so give it a minute. But the call script, which is here, an actual script for contacting an office for a member of Congress and setting up a meeting. Again, there's going to be slightly different if you're setting up a virtual meeting as opposed to setting up an in-person meeting on May the 15th. One of the big differences is if you're doing it virtually, you can give them kind of a window of time and say, look, we'd really like to speak with the congressman or congresswoman about these important C-service issues. If it's virtual, will they be available the week of April 17th or something like that? If it's for the fly-in, it's got to be May 15th. That's the day that we're going up to the Hill. I'll mention also on this note that if you are setting up meetings for the fly-in, please work with your RVP. We want to make sure that they are coordinating everything, your region vice president for legislative affairs, because there are some things to keep in mind. One thing, for example, is how many meetings you'll be able to take in a day, how to kind of set them up. So maybe you knock out your your House meetings in the morning, your Senate meetings in the afternoon. It's a lot of walking to get from the House side to the Senate side and vice versa. You don't want to be running back and forth all day. So maybe try to do one side in the morning, one side in the afternoon. And your RVPs are likely to know these things. So please work with them when you are setting up these meetings. But again, there is the call script there to kind of help you when you are contacting your members of Congress. Also, I'll just mention very quickly, in terms of the actual contact information for schedulers, I provide that to the RVPs. I'm able to get that information through this quorum software that we have. So it doesn't go out to everybody, but it goes out to the RVP, so they'll be able to help you with the scheduling as well. Council fact sheet. This is the next link going down. And I'll pull that up here. Special thanks to Scott Sund, who actually, Scott, you might not remember, but you actually put this together. I think it looks fantastic. It has relevant information about your council. It also has at the bottom here our top priorities. This is one of the documents that you want to leave behind with your member of Congress when you meet with them. So either in an email, if you're meeting with them virtually, or just physically leave it behind. It tells them how many members, Navy League members, are in their district or in their state, some of the activities that you're engaged in. And this document is uploaded as a Word document, so you can edit it if you need to. In other words, if you don't have any community education activities, you don't just have to leave that blank. You can just delete that. And we will update the asks here, top Navy League advocacy priorities, obviously for 2024, as we put those asks together. Quick note here, just so I can pull all this together in terms of this Hill Surge toolkit and everything that will be there in time for the Hill Surge and the flying and things like that. Before the meeting, the things you want to have with you when you go in to see a member of Congress or when you're meeting virtually, so you might want to send these things via email ahead of time, should be the presentation, your council fact sheet, the issue briefs, which I'll get into in just a moment, your Navy League business cards, if you've brought them with you for an in-person meeting. If you are doing an in-person meeting, definitely bring a camera so you can take a photo with your member of Congress and share that through your social media and through your council newsletters. If you're doing it virtually, you can still kind of take a screenshot. I know a lot of folks have done that. And then you also want to bring the congressional profile, which I'll discuss in just a moment. Those are the major items that you want to bring with you. And for those that are attending the fly-in, all of that stuff will be provided to you in a packet the night before we go up to the Hill. So don't worry about that. We'll provide all that for you. For folks that are doing virtual meetings, it might be a little bit more work kind of compiling those things, but of course, we'll help you with that. Getting to the end of the things that we're going to talk about here on this homepage. Below are the issue briefs, which I mentioned just a moment ago. For every one of the legislative asks, there will be a one-page issue brief. This is a great thing to give to the staff members or to the member of Congress because it is really just the bullet points, just the outline, just one page describing here's the problem, here's the solution, here's why we care about it and why we think you should pass this bill or appropriate this money, or whatever the case may be. So you can see for 2023, Navy shipbuilding, Marine Corps amphibs, stuff like that. Each one of them is a one-page brief on these legislative asks, and we will have those for our 2024 asks as well. For those of you taking virtual meetings, go ahead and email those ahead of time to whichever staff member is kind of your point of contact. For those of you that will be attending the fly-in, we will have these things already printed out and in a packet for you so you can leave them behind after your meeting. Just a couple other things. These things are not as necessary for you, but if you want to get a little background information, you're welcome to do so. The unfunded priority lists that the C services put out after the president's budget is released. These are the ones for 2023 you can see on your screen. We will have the ones for 2024 once they come out, which of course is not until after the president's budget comes out, and that might not be for several weeks still. Then additional materials. We have a number of things that are worth looking into if you just want a little bit more information. The maritime policy statement being the most important by far, which is right there. Then we have a lot of reports and white pages that we have put out ourselves, which you can see kind of going down to the bottom of this page here. But those are not things that you necessarily need to delve into, but there's a lot of good information there. So again, in terms of the virtual meetings or the fly-in meetings, all of the materials that you need, for the most part, minus, I guess, the congressional profile, which I'll get into in just a second here, are going to be here on this left side of the screen under the C Services Hill Surge Toolkit, and then also under the issue briefs for each one of the asks. Now, getting towards the end of this Quorum webpage stuff, and then I'm going to go into one of the presentations, but I'll pause for questions in just a moment. Only two other things I want to bring to your attention. One is this tab here that says My Officials. If you click on that, it's going to take you to this page where you literally have every single member of Congress listed. So just go to your region and then identify the person that you are meeting with. In this case, I think I already opened up the one for Senator Richard Blumenthal, so let's pretend we're meeting with him. If you click on that, it will pull up a district profile, and every single district profile looks similar to this. At the top here, you're going to have just a lot of background information on the senator or the member of the House representative that you're meeting with. Just some information about their education, where they come from, some of the things they're working on, things like that. And then down here, you'll see the committees that they serve on, bills that we have supported, that they supported, things of that nature, just to give you a little bit of background. This is not something you're going to leave behind if you take it with you, but it's something where, I mean, having a photo doesn't hurt. You can recognize the person. And then, of course, having a little bit of information about them, about the member of Congress, that's helpful as well. And so that is the district profile, which, again, you can find by going to My Officials. Click on that. It's going to take you to this page full of links for members of Congress. Just go to your particular region, click on a name, and it will give you a district profile similar to this. Now, the very last thing, promise, very last thing on the website that I want to go over is after the meeting. Very, very important that you report the meeting so that we have it in our files and that we can look it up easily. By doing that, you just go to this Hill Surge MOC Meetings, click on Post MOC Meeting Notes, click on that. It will pull up this menu or this questionnaire. And what you can do is put in the information for the member of Congress. For example, I'll put in Blumenthal right here, Senator Richard Blumenthal, or you might want to put in the staff member you met with or whatever the case may be. What type of interaction was it? I'll say it was a meeting, wasn't just a brief introduction. What was the date? What was the time? Notes are pretty important. If you can let us know what they had a lot of questions about, what they seemed to really care about, what they disagreed with, what they agreed with, any of that stuff is very, very helpful to us. And again, all of this goes into our database, so we can just look up the last time somebody met with, again, in this hypothetical case, Senator Blumenthal, and we can get this information so that we are prepared for our next meeting with the senator. Below that, you can click on some of these related issues. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Lucas, Mike Spence, on your meeting report, it is the last time I used it a couple of months ago, it was geared almost totally towards in-person meetings, and a number of the selections that you can make on there don't refer to virtual type meetings. So if you guys could take a look at that, that would be very helpful.
Okay, I'm actually going to make a note of that, and I appreciate you mentioning that, Mike. So I think all I have to do is just contact the folks over at Quorum and ask them to include some more fields for virtual meetings. But that's a very good point. Again,
It just needs to be updated to the new meeting reality, which is, you know, a lot of those are going to be virtual.
Correct, correct. And in fact, I'm looking right now at meeting location. I can see district office, DC office. We probably want to have something in there as well for virtual meeting,
Right,
for
right.
meeting location. Okay,
Right.
fantastic. Mhm. Okay, so let me work on getting that updated. I don't think that should be a very heavy lift. Is follow-up necessary? That's a really good one. Click yes or no. If you click yes, we're going to get kind of an alert, and it will let us know that, listen, we really need to reach back out to them. And the notes become especially helpful there. So if you say, you know, they had a question about amphibs that I couldn't answer, then, you know, we can follow up, which is fantastic. And I'm going to mention this when we get into the presentation, but we always encourage you to say, you know, if they ask a question, you don't know the answer to it, don't try to, you know, ad lib or make something up. Feel very comfortable saying, listen, I don't have that information right now. I'm going to contact headquarters and have them get back to you. And this is one of the ways to help us do that. Just put in the notes. They had a question about this. I couldn't answer it. Click yes. Is follow-up necessary? You put in your council attendees, whoever was there, and then just click submit. And then we get that information. That's literally everything on the website. I'm going to get into the presentation next just to show you how we do the presentation, but I will pause for a moment here and see if anyone has any questions about all this stuff that we just went over. Again, it was a lot, so this is recorded. You can always go back and watch it again. You can reach out if you have questions, but I'll pause here and see if anyone has any questions at this moment. Okay, hearing none. I will go ahead and get into the presentation. You can always open the slideshow up by doing, what is that, I guess, view full screen. I'm actually not going to do that right now. I just want to kind of go through this a little bit briefly, especially considering that a lot of folks are going to be carrying this in their hands to the various offices. I also want you to be able to see down here towards the bottom the notes that we include. Now, these are all the notes for the 2023 asks. This is going to be different, but we do put a lot of effort into those notes underneath each slide. You can literally read them word for word if you want to during your meeting with a member of Congress. We would not highly recommend that, but that's how, you know, comprehensive we like to make the notes. It's literally everything you need to know to go through the presentation and to deliver this presentation to a member of Congress. So what I'm going to do now is go through these slides as if I was giving the presentation, although I will kind of pause here and there and tell you a little bit about how, you know, we like to deliver these and why. But we'll go ahead and get started just so you see that, you know, it's pretty easy and actually pretty enjoyable to do these presentations. So on this first slide, this is your opportunity to just introduce yourself, thank the member of Congress for their time, introduce your teammates. Hopefully you're going to have someone else on your team who is there taking notes. Hopefully you will have someone who is a constituent from the district or the state of the representative that you are meeting with. And if you want to, what I do when I give this presentation is I'll usually throw in one sentence which really captures the urgency or the importance of this meeting. I would say something like, thank you for meeting us at this time when America is faced with the challenge of great power competition. And we know that our maritime forces are really going to be the tip of the spear when it comes to those types of confrontations. You know, something along those lines if you want to. Otherwise, no reason to stumble over yourself. Just make some quick introductions and then go ahead and dive into the presentation. The next slide is the agenda. It's always great just to pull this up so they know you're not going to ramble endlessly for 30 or 45 minutes. They can see exactly what you're going to be covering. And also based on which committees they happen to serve on, you can kind of highlight what they might be most interested in. So for example, you're meeting someone that sits on the House Armed Services Committee. You can say, look, I want to tell you a little bit about the Navy League, about how critical our sea services are to America's national and economic security. And we're going to talk a little bit about the Navy and the Marine Corps because I know that's an area of interest for you. It's something you work on. And so it's really going to be very beneficial for us to be able to talk about that. So you can kind of, again, focus on what they care about based on the committees they sit on, or maybe they have a Coast Guard base in their district or a Navy base or something like that. Okay, the next slide is really an introductory slide. There's a lot of great information here, but as I say, every time I kind of go through this, the best thing to do on this slide is tell your personal story about why the Navy League matters to you. So, you know, you are part of the Navy League because you served X number of years in a sea service, or because you have a relative or a child that does, or because you see all of the wonderful volunteer work that our Navy League councils do in your local community. So, you know, tie this into why you care about the Navy League. As I always say, it's great that, you know, President Teddy Roosevelt helped found this organization. That's really fascinating. But is that the thing that first drew you to the Navy League? Yeah, maybe not. So, you know, talk about why you care about it. So you might say something like, you know, the Navy League has been around for over 100 years. During that time, we have expanded to over 180 councils across the country, over 28,000 members worldwide. The reason I got involved in the Navy League is because, you know, my son or daughter went into the Marines, and I saw how the Navy League provides a lot of support, a lot of morale, boosting volunteer opportunities, things of that nature. And that's why I just knew this is an organization that I really wanted to work with. Of course, you can also mention the youth programs the Navy League works with. You can mention the ship commissionings, anything that you really care about. Because again, I think it helps to personalize this, not to mention if you're meeting with your member of Congress, when you talk about what you're doing with the Navy League in your district, that's what's happening in their district. So I'm sure they care about that as well. So again, with this slide, try to personalize it just a little bit. I think that makes it a little bit more interesting, and it leaves your member of Congress with a story that they might remember. The next slide is really kind of an umbrella, overarching concept of why you are here to discuss these things with your member of Congress. Again, this really just boils down to America's economic and national security are highly dependent on the sea services. We talk about how that forward presence allows us to play an away game, keeping our adversaries on their heels in places like the South China Sea or in the Arctic sea lanes, rather than having them right up on our coastlines. We talk about the humanitarian response that our sea services are able to provide. But honestly, you need to look no further than the Red Sea and America's sea services pushing back against Houthi attacks on commercial shipping to see how all this stuff ties in together. National security, economic security, protecting global commerce, all of these things. I mean, it's very easy to put these pieces together just based on what you're seeing in the nightly news every day at this point. So that's really what we want to emphasize here. And again, I actually got more long-winded just now than I would recommend you do. When you get to this slide, just emphasize again, look, America has always depended on the sea services for our economic and national security, and that is more true today as we encounter great competition than it has been possibly at any time since the Cold War. Okay, then we get into the specific needs of each sea service. Again, very quickly, I'll tell you, you don't have to go over this in your presentation, but I'll just mention to you, the way that we put this together is we look at the president's budget, we look at the unfunded priorities list, we look at the maritime policy statement, we put those things together, and then we try to boil it down to the top issues for each sea service. So for the Navy in 2023, our number one concern was capacity, making sure that we had the shipbuilding industrial base to produce the type of fleet that we're going to need to push back against great power competitors such as Russia and China. One of the things that we really focused on was the AUKUS agreement and how that will be transferring 3 Virginia-class submarines to our Australian allies. We would like to increase capacity in the submarine shipbuilding industrial base to ensure that we are not just taking 3 submarines out of our inventory and transferring them over to our allies, but we are producing submarines, particularly Virginia-class, fast enough so that we can continue to bolster our inventory while also transferring those 3 other submarines. Also, based on our research, we found that we can increase the production of destroyers to 3 per year rather than 2 per year, and even double the production of Constellation-class frigates from 2 per year to 4 per year based on the capacity that is available. It just requires the congressional funding and the kind of long-term strategy to get us to that point. Now, I will mention one thing that came out very recently, long after we did our Hill Surge last year, and that is workforce issues, particularly when it comes to the Constellation-class frigate. So that's something that I would not be surprised if that pops up in our 2024 hill surge presentation or fly-in presentation. So while we might have the capacity and with enough money, we could build up our industrial base to the point where we can produce 4 frigates per year, that workforce, that's an issue. And that's something that's potentially a bottleneck that's really going to impact this. So that's something that, again, wouldn't be surprised if we talk about workforce as we go into our 2024 legislative asks. For Marine Corps, biggest thing was the amphibs. I will say that the efforts of the Navy League, combined with a few other allied organizations that are definitely pushing for these things as well, ensured that we did get LPD 33 authorized in the National Defense Authorization Act. So hopefully we will see the funding for that. We have always supported the Commandant's vision for 31 of these amphibs to be able to ensure that the Marine Corps is agile, lethal, distributed, able to conduct operations in not only the South China Sea, but in other parts of the world as well. There was talk about, when Sudan was first destabilized last year, or the most recent destabilization, would have been nice to have some amphibs close by to get some of our, American citizens out of there. And of course, the amphibs have uses in other places all over the world. So we've always supported that. When we brought this issue up to Congress last year, it was still unclear if LPD 33 was going to get the funding that was needed. It now looks like it will get that funding, so we were successful on that front. For the Coast Guard, these asks, again, wouldn't be surprised if you see something similar to these. We often do have kind of evergreen asks for the Coast Guard because they tend to need some similar things every year. One is expanding their operations and support budget to meet the requirements of their ever-expanding mission set. I've said this 1,000 times, but I'll say it again. We think of the Coast Guard as responding to hurricanes and catastrophic weather conditions. Maybe we think of them in terms of countering drug smuggling and human smuggling and things of that nature. But the Coast Guard is taking on missions all over the globe. They are in the Arctic sea lanes. They are in the Pacific, training our allies, helping them to push back against illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing. They are in the Persian Gulf. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. If we're going to ask our Coast Guard to do this massive mission set, then we have to make sure that we fund them appropriately. And based on our research, that type of funding usually looks like a 5% increase in their operations and support budget. Shoreside infrastructure is another thing that they always need funding for. As I've said before, the Coast Guard often has their facilities in places where there is extreme inclement weather. That's why they are there. They are there to respond to those types of weather conditions. But that weather takes a real pounding to their bases, to their housing facilities, to things of that nature. And so they often have a backlog in shoreside infrastructure. And not to mention some of the new cutters and vessels that they are set to receive are going to require different types of docks, longer docks, and things of that nature. So that's going to require some shoreside infrastructure funding as well. Last thing, pay parity. I mentioned this earlier with our campaigns, ensuring that our Coast Guard is paid in the event of a government shutdown. That's something that we have been pushing for. Again, that bill is still kind of sitting in Congress right now. However, based on the latest that we've heard, there's not tremendous anxiety about this happening. However, we still would like to see this legislated so that the Coast Guard doesn't have to worry about their paychecks in the midst of a government shutdown while they are still conducting dangerous missions. Okay, getting towards the end of the presentation, next is the Maritime Administration and the Merchant Marine. Our biggest ask for 2023 was to ensure that the National Maritime Transportation Strategy, which we had written into law, and I say we because I really feel like the Navy League was first and foremost in pushing for this. I'm sure other folks supported it, but we really took the lead on this thing, got it written into law. And in 2023, our big thing was, look, you need to get an FFRDC, federally funded research and development corporation or center, sorry, to do this work, to actually compile this report. And you need to appropriate the money necessary for making that happen. And as of this point, it looks like that is happening. And so that was another big success for 2023. For 2024, we'll have to go back and look at what is most pressing for MARAD, the Maritime Administration, and for the Merchant Marine, and then we will include that information here. Additional concerns, we always talk about how continuing resolutions hurt the Department of Defense, the sea services, and yes, they do. They prevent new programs from getting started. you know, what can you do? Honestly, there's no one on Capitol Hill that likes continuing resolutions. There's no one up there that says, hey, I really want a continuing resolution. Why not just do that, you know, forever? That's not the case. Folks would like to pass actual spending bills, but sometimes it just doesn't happen. So we always talk about this. Everyone agrees, everyone nods their head, but we end up with a continuing resolution anyway. But of course, they do harm the ability of our sea services to adequately and effectively use their money. And then, of course, we always support the Sea Cadets, the Young Marines, and the State Merchant Marine Academies. So those are included there as well. As we mentioned earlier, talking with Bill, in terms of the Sea Cadets, maybe we'll see if there's anything that Doug would recommend. But usually we just support the grant that they get every year from Congress for their operations. Okay, this slide is just a summary. This is mainly for them. If you leave this behind or something like that, they just have a quick summary page to go through for everything that we just discussed. You don't really need to read it word for word. You can just kind of, if you want to, say again, look, Navy capacity for shipbuilding is important. Marine Corps needs amphibs. Coast Guard needs the operations and support budget, shoreside infrastructure and pay parity. And of course, as we talked about with MARAD in 2023, the big thing was getting the National Maritime Transportation Strategy handed off to an FFRDC and paid for. Next to last slide here, opportunities to work with the Navy League. Before you leave that office, it's always good to just say, listen, you know, this doesn't have to be the last time that we get together and meet. We have a lot of things going on at our local councils, which you can join us for, whether it's luncheons or events or ship commissionings or whatever. Please join one of our supported caucuses, namely the Shipbuilding Caucus. We have a breakfast every quarter that we do with the Congressional Shipbuilding Caucus. And we can assist with Military Service Academy nominations. And then, of course, Center for Maritime Strategy. Do not hesitate to shamelessly plug the Center for Maritime Strategy because they are a tremendous resource for all things maritime, whether you want to know about commercial shipping, Navy operations in the Red Sea, South China Sea, whatever the case may be. Believe me, they know everything, and they are a tremendous resource for any office that wants to speak with them. So make sure to just mention that. Then time for thank yous. Thank you so much for your time today. Please stay in touch. And then, of course, follow up the next day with an email, or if you want to send a handwritten note. I know Marilyn Wong sends handwritten notes to the folks that she's met with. That's a wonderful thing to do. And just let them know how much you appreciate their time. And if you send an email, you can also attach maybe the issue briefs again or something like that, just reminding them how important that stuff is. So with all of that being said, that is the presentation. And I will see if anyone has any questions.
Statement again.
I'm sorry, Bill, say that again.
I said, we also send a maritime policy statement. We do at the end.
That's right. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's excellent. You can send that as an email because, again, you just need to go to navyleague.quorum.us, and then you have the maritime policy statement right here. So you can just click on it, open it up, send it as a link or send it as an attachment. And that's a really nice thing to do after you've had your meeting. Yep.
Luke?
Yeah.
Luke?
Mhm.
The meeting can be expanded to include comments and questions that we can address before ending it.
Marilyn is absolutely correct, and apologies on my part for not mentioning that. Yes, certainly at the end, take a moment and see if the member of Congress has any questions. This also can come up throughout the discussion. I kind of went through it rather quickly because that was, you know, a little bit of the purpose of today's training. But as you're actually giving the presentation, if you sense that your member of Congress has a question, wants something that there's something you want to talk about, definitely pause, answer their question, or if you can't, again, just say, I don't have that information right now, but I'll get back to you, or I'll have headquarters get back to you. Marilyn, was there anything else you wanted to mention on that now?
Luke, let me add that last year we got a question on maritime policy. About China, South China Sea, and we ended up referring it to CMS to answer it. And they spent time studying a proper response to Congress on it. So it can get rather elaborate.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, that's what the Center for Maritime Strategy is all about. I mean, they will answer that question, even if it requires, a 10-page response, they will make sure that and for some of the staff members, even it's possible the member of Congress is not going to read through that whole thing, but sometimes you will have staff members in a member's office who will want that detailed response. And that's a great thing to ask the Center for Maritime Strategy to assist with, because they've got even more information than we've got. Just a wealth of expertise.
Also, we did discover some lingering negative impacts from the LCS building program, which we forwarded to you. So negative comments, sensitivity levels are important to know about too, where members of Congress were critical of the Navy, that it's useful to know too. Those are like hidden minefields, areas. They could be addressed maybe better later at a later time and place, but should be addressed nevertheless.
So I want to piggyback on what you just said. And then after that, Jim Semrat, I know you still have your hand up, so I'll I'll see what your question is in just a moment, but I wanted to touch on what Bill said. So yes, if you are encountering a member of Congress who's not necessarily a big fan or a big friend of the sea services or of the military, whatever the case may be, that doesn't mean that you don't have things to talk about. Remember that there are humanitarian missions that our sea services are engaged in. Maybe if you can't reach agreement on the Navy and Marine Corps, you can get them on your side for the Coast Guard to help out with some of the Coast Guard things. Every member can be supportive of something in our portfolio, no question whatsoever. So do your best to explain, listen, the Navy and the Marine Corps are essential for not only protecting our national security, but as you can see, keeping global shipping lanes open so that food and products can get around the world and help people and do all these things. But if they're still not listening to that, you can say, oh, and by the way, look, surely you can't have any issue with the Coast Guard. We can talk about that.
I think it's of value for your database too, so we know more about that congressperson.
As
Yeah,
well
so
as,
yeah, know about the congressperson that you're going to meet.
As well as Luke and John Caskin and Jim Offit are there, we have a response for any objection.
I can say
Yes.
that for Marilyn Wong too.
I know Marilyn does. Geez, I've heard Marilyn do her presentation before, and believe me, you can't catch her off guard. Jim Semrat, I'm sorry, we've had you waiting for a while. What was your question?
So it's really just a comment, and Jim understands this. Jim Offit understands this. I mean, Sarah Fuentes organized a virtual fly-in several years ago, and there's extreme value in doing that, especially now that the Capitol's open, because during COVID, the Capitol was closed, and we haven't been there. But I know when me and Captain walked around the halls, we're going from building to building. I mean, we just didn't have enough time to do it in one day. I mean, I can't contact 45 legislators in one day. It ain't going to happen.
Certainly.
And you prioritized them A, B, and C. This was extremely helpful. But I'll tell you what, some of the people I knew I needed to contact, they just weren't available when they tried to reach out. So we need to have some flexibility.
Jim, that's going to happen. Okay. That's going to happen. So what you really need to do is you take our prioritized list, and you set yourself up for however many people you think you can do. I don't think it's more than 6 or 8. And now what we're saying to you, if you can't do them in this one day, and it's important, then we have to move on to do virtual. And you can do virtual as soon as you want to. I mean, once you've got your meeting set up, then you can begin to then start to schedule virtual meetings for other folks. So again, now we're back to a 2-pronged approach. We're saying our primary effort here and our prioritized effort here is to try and see some people physically. And yes, it's a long, grueling day, but we still can fall back on the virtual. So then that's up to the region vice presidents to help their team prioritize that. So and we'll be glad to help you at national, because we'll be looking at who gets committee assignments and all that kind of stuff to help prioritize those who are constituents of yours. So that's kind of where we're coming from.
And also,
Semrat definitely makes a good point. I'm sorry, Sad, I was just going to hand it off to you. You've done this before. If you could let folks know about it.
Oh, sure. Well, I was going to say for Jim too, it doesn't have to be with the member themselves. Like if you get a meeting with the staffer, I think that is just as good, sometimes if not better. because that's who the member is going to listen to. So if they say the member's not available, but you can meet with the chief of staff or the MLA or a Navy fellow, take that meeting if it's a top office, because they're going to have that. I actually think almost everybody here looks pretty familiar. I think everyone might have done it before. It's really fun. Every industry does it. We have a maritime fund coming in first, and it's that personal touch and effort of knowing Navy leaguers are so committed. They'll fly in on their own time and come up and visit to promote these issues that makes them really sit up and listen. And it's fun because they have, they have to listen to you. They work for you. It's good. It feels good to get your opinion out. It's very satisfying. And they want to hear. They're going to be respectful. So I think it's always a great day. So I'm really looking forward to doing it again.
Donna, what would you say is kind of the max in terms of meetings from your past experience? About 6 to 8, like Jim Offit said?
Jim is very ambitious. I would 6 to 8, I think, is a lot. I think I would try, like 4 to 6.
4 to
I think
6.
it's good. You have time for lunch, a little downtime in between. 8, that's almost 1 hour. Like you can't do that.
That's a big.
Yeah.
Well, you can't do. You can do 6 to 8 if you don't have to go back and forth, which.
Right. Yeah.
Last couple times we did it, you start at the House and end at the Senate. But if you ever have to go back and forth, you might as well think 4 to 6 or 6, somewhere along in there. But anyhow, just takes a little bit of shoe rubber. That's all. Some energy bars.
Is there anything to stop us from spending an extra day in Washington?
I'm not going to stop you.
Okay.
Stay longer.
You're certainly free to do so, Marilyn. First of all, Marilyn, you act like anyone can tell you not to do something. Like when Marilyn puts her mind to something, it's just going to happen. Marilyn, you could ask that question about can anyone stop you from doing something? I have yet to see that happen. So the answer is no.
This is Don. We actually had Ward Cook come in a day ahead of time and 2 fly in, maybe 3 even, in order to meet with some of his, because he wanted to get more than the ones he could schedule in one day. So you could do it. I did 9 one day, but I had to miss half of the reception to get that in. I don't recommend that. 7 would be an ideal number at the most.
Don, so I think Don might have set the record with 9. I haven't heard any higher than that. I don't know, Coach Susan, you and Fair Kim, I think, were a team. Did you guys get, how many meetings did you take in a day typically?
I would say between 4 and 6. I don't remember exactly.
Yeah, no, that sounds like the right amount. And again, by prioritizing getting those key offices, 4 to 6 is fantastic, especially if we have, several dozen Navy leaguers each taking 4 to 6 meetings. That's a good percentage of the total members that we will have a conversation with. So I think that would be ideal. 4 to 6 would be good.
Well, and they weren't close together.
So you remember, Coach, you running all the way to the Senate side and back to the House side. I've done that before. Get your steps in. That's good.
Yeah, I would add it's almost impossible to do 9 if you have to go back and forth to the Senate. Those were all on the House side, but we did have to hump it, and there were meetings in all 3 buildings, not necessarily conveniently spaced. You have to set the meetings when you can get the time. So when the RVP starts scheduling it, you just have to take them as you can. And then when you get down to where you filled a team up pretty close, then you have to negotiate with the congressman's staff to find time where they can make it within the window that you have left.
Scheduling can be a bit of a pain. I'm sorry, go ahead, Coach Susan.
I'm sorry. The 100% blessing for the Navy League is the diligence of the members making the effort to do the face-to-face and showing the enthusiasm we have in supporting the sea services.
It makes a difference. I mean, it really makes quite an impression on members of Congress when folks fly in from around the country and come up to the office and say, look, this is so important to me that I wanted to sit down face to face with you and talk about these issues. So Coach Susan is 100% correct. That really makes an impression. Believe me, they will remember that when it comes time to vote on some of these things. So absolutely, I agree with that. Jim, Simrad, did you have another question or comment?
No, I'll put down my hand.
Oh, sorry.
You know, Luke, I wouldn't have made this commitment if it hadn't been for Don Giles. And I've been so happy to have done this. And he's been very supportive, and so has everyone. John Caskin and Sinclair Lewis and Fair Kim, and it's been an awesome journey.
I think you just touched on the fact that these types of events really help us to come together and to understand, you know, how important our work is and how few people out there are really doing what we're doing. So yeah, you look at the folks on this screen, whether it's Don or Marilyn or Ed or Jim Offit, or I mean, I don't want to miss that. Everybody on this screen, I mean, we're part of a small group that's out there really making a difference when it comes to the sea services. And I think, you know, that's important. And this type of flying is going to help us to really kind of, you know, do that, you know, in person and have a nice reception afterwards. Should be a really nice experience for a lot of the folks here.
I would make a recommendation when we go back this time. I'm proud of our lapel pins and some of our little giveaways. And I think it would be very nice to have lapel pins and some giveaways for the people that we present to.
I agree. And I'm making a note of it.
No,
Like it's
That
a
is a
little
great
late because
idea.
sometimes they don't like to accept things, right? Like you can't really give a gift in the meeting where you're asking for stuff, because of
Oh.
ethics. But we might be able to have some stuff out at the reception where it's less transactional.
okay.
There you go. And if we can get the member of Congress to attend the reception or the staff members as well, then you can certainly point out that, hey, there's all this great Navy League swag and giveaways. Go ahead and make sure to grab something on your way out or something. So
Well,
there's always a way.
Look how proud you are to wear the Navy League pin. And I think
That's
they
right.
would be too, and they would reflect on our time with them.
I agree. No, I love this pin. I think it looks fantastic. And people comment on it too. So
It's
it's
lovely.
definitely doing its job.
You know, Luke, Gary Battles here. We have challenge coins for our chapter. And a challenge coin is a very, you know, they cost maybe 25, 30 bucks. That's a great gift to give to a member of Congress. Another comment for the good of the order is, you know, when we called in the last 2 years, which was virtual, and we needed someone who was a constituent, and none of us were, we would tap into the Sea Cadets and get a parent of a Sea Cadet or an adult leader of the Sea Cadet and have them come in on the meeting. And then if it's an in-person meeting, we could always have them call in during the time of the meeting, just so you can say, and we have, you know, Joe Blow here, who is a constituent, and have him just say a couple words.
Yeah, so that's interesting. I was actually thinking myself on if you take a meeting and it's somebody in your region, but you just don't have somebody from that specific district, is there a way to either have somebody kind of on an iPad that can kind of virtually
Zoom
attend the
in,
meeting,
yeah.
or have somebody on the phone?
Right.
But something like that. So again, you do have a consider. You can say, look, you know, myself and my other teammate here don't reside in your district, but we have on the phone, you know, this person from your district, and they want to make sure you're aware of these issues. So yeah, definitely finding some way to really hammer home the point that constituents in your district are part of this meeting. Gary, very important. You're absolutely right about that.
You know, Luke, speaking of the Sea Cadets and with the Sea, Air, and Space coming up, I think it would be a very awesome thing for us to put an award out there for our top Sea Cadets and a special trip to Sea, Air, and Space for them to report back to each unit.
Sea Cadet award, you're saying, at Sea Air Space?
Well, award, a recognition, or something that we would have them travel to see just what Sea, Air, and Space is, and I think that would make an awesome impact on these children.
Well, I think you're absolutely right about having folks travel in. Sada, we typically get the local Sea Cadets, I think, to do some of the openings for some of our panels, right? Yeah. Okay. So maybe some folks from outside of the region would be nice. Okay. Well, I think Jim Moffett might have had to hop off, but I'll ask, does anyone else have any
No,
questions or comments? Oh, Jim Moffat's with us still, sorry.
No, that's fine. Went mobile, so just want to make sure everybody was copacetic and see if I think it's time to close it off. We said we'd do an hour roughly, so.
Yeah, I think that that sounds about right. So, folks, again, this has been recorded. I'm going to go ahead and post it on navyleague.quorum.us so you can go back and watch it at any time. Again, I hope to have that email out to everyone regarding the fly-in this week. That way you will finally have all the information you need about that. If you cannot attend the fly-in, don't feel bad about it. We're still going to do virtual meetings. We're going to continue doing trainings. We're going to continue developing our legislative asks. And believe me, by the time we get to about mid-March, definitely plenty of time before the fly-in, plenty of time before the virtual meetings. We will have everything kind of set in stone, the legislative asks and everything like that. We'll do another training then, and we'll get everybody on their feet and good to go. With that being said, I guess everyone take care. I think this terrible weather is just starting to break for most folks, so hopefully next week will be a little bit nicer. Be safe out there on the roads, take care, and I will see everybody next time. Great seeing you all today.
Thanks.
Bye.
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 Bye-bye.